Hey friends, welcome back to another video. My name's Lefebvre, and today I'm going to show you 4 different techniques to paint evergreen trees. So let's jump in and get started. Hey friends, did you guys know that I have extra bonus content over on my Patreon? I have things like extra exclusive tutorials only available to Patreon members, 3 tutorials a month to be exact, tracing pages for any sketches that I do for my tutorials. I have monthly watercolor challenges, behind the scenes vlogs. It's getting pretty crazy over there and exciting. We also have a couple community chats where we get to support one another, share our work, and just become a really great community. So if you're interested, make sure to check the description below, click on that link, and become a Patreon member today. Okay friends, so today I'm excited because I'm going to show you 4 different techniques to use to paint evergreen trees. Some of my favorite trees to paint, especially in the wintertime. So beautiful. And I'm going to show you 4 different techniques. I did a reel recently where I showed you one and I called it a hack. Some people got really upset that I called it a hack because apparently it's tried and true, techniques that real artists use. Well, you know what? Some of these are shortcuts to create beautiful art. Call it a technique, call it a hack, call it whatever you want. Either way, they're fun and we're going to do them today. So for my materials, I am painting in my Academy watercolor paper block, cold press 100% cotton. I have my Shinhan watercolors. I have some brushes here. Before this, you are going to need first a spray bottle for the first technique. You're going to need some sort of pokey tool like a toothpick, which is what I'm going to use for another one. Maybe some table salt and and then a brush. A brush that you don't care about, but I'll get to that part. Okay, let's start with the first one because this one is a really cool method that I recently saw from another artist, Jackie Peacock. You definitely have to check out her channel. I will link it down below. She is like the queen of evergreen trees. Honestly, her trees are absolutely gorgeous. Saw her do this technique and I was like, I have to share this. This is so cool. But definitely go to her channel, give her a follow. And if you love trees, you're going to love her channel. Okay, so for the first technique, what you're going to do is you're going to need your spray bottle. Now, if you want to do some sort of background first, like a sky, you can definitely do that. So I would lay down your background first, like a light blue or whatever color you want to do your sky. Then you need to let it completely dry. Once you have your background down, then we can paint our tree. I'm not going to do a background for this one. But what you're going to do is you're going to take your spray bottle, and this is where it gets a little tricky. This is probably the trickiest part because what you want to do is apply a light mist to your paper. You don't want to hold it too close where it's going to create a puddle of water. What you want to create is a sparkle of water on your paper. This is where it's like little dots everywhere. Okay, you don't want like a puddle or it to be soaking wet. Just a sparkle, which is the trickiest part. So you're going to want to hold it at a far enough away angle that you only get a little bit of it. Then, because I don't want to do it and have my paper dry, you're going to want to work slightly faster than you normally would so it doesn't dry. Because what's going to happen is once we start painting our tree, the paint is going to flow to all those little bits of water, the mist of water that's on our paper. And what it naturally does, which you'll see in a second, I just want to explain this without feeling too rushed because it's going to dry. What it's going to do is almost create these natural branch textures with it, which you'll see, which is amazing. So I'm gonna do that. I'm hopefully gonna get my misting right. Sometimes it doesn't work and I'll have to wait for my paper to dry and then try it again. And I do want to try and show you the sparkle just so you get it right. So I'm going to get my brush and my color ready so I can just start painting right after. Okay, let's see if I can do this. Okay, far enough away. Ah! I'm like really far. I don't know if you can see that. Okay, see right there, that sparkle where it's like little dots, not a puddle. That's what you want. Now you're going to take your brush and you're just going to paint a tree like you normally would. Now, if I can get a close up of the shot, look at those branches naturally going. Do you see that? Okay, it's a little different than wet on wet because not the whole paper is wet like when you do wet on wet. Look at that. And you're just going to gently start. This is even a little bit too wet, to be honest. I might have done a couple more than I should have. So there's more sparkle to it. You want a subtle sparkle, but look at those branches just naturally branching off, okay? I'm gonna mix it a little bit with my light green. Okay, it's a little too wet. Does take a little bit of practice to try and get your mist right. See, it's a little too wet right there. But like, look at that. It's like effortless branches and pine needles, which is amazing. When I saw her do this technique, I was like, holy moly, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen. See, like this line right here, it just looks like little branches. Because it's just, remember, the paint wants to flow wherever there's water. So anytime you touch a little sparkle of water, the paint naturally flows there. Now see how this is getting a little bit out of control? It's too wet there. That's okay. And now it's a little bit too dry down here. This is where it takes practice, because even I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to wash off my brush, dry it just a little bit, and I'm just going to blend out the bottom. Like there's a bottom there. Now let's see if I can fix this. I'm going to wash off my brush, dry it, and I'm going to try and lift some of those branches. It's a little too much for my liking. What if just gonna try and mop up some. It's going a little crazy on that end, but like, look at those branches. Ugh. It's so cool. I'm gonna just try and get in between here. Get a little bit of the whiteness of the paper. So it didn't work as well there, but the rest of it. So if it doesn't work the first time, you're gonna have to try it again. Okay? Because it is like the coolest technique I've ever seen. I'm just gonna try and get a little bit more defined branches. So it's still a little bit damp. But like, look how cool that is. So definitely a technique that I need to keep practicing as well. But I had to show you that one. So make sure you check out her channel because she's got it like down pat. And I'm just going to add some more darkness over here. But it still looks pretty stinking cool. Okay, just look at the up close if you can. What? Makes me want to do more. I want to try again, but I don't want to reactivate that. So I'm going to let that be. Maybe we'll try again at the end. It's pretty cool. Okay, so that's our first technique. Very, very cool. Okay, our second one, we're going to create a foliage brush. I just saw Sarah Cray do this in a video recently. If you haven't checked out Sarah Cray, you're going to love her as well. I'm sure you know her though. She recently did a video where she explained how she makes a foliage brush. And this is something I actually haven't done before. So I wanted to do it with you guys for this video to see how it works. So get a brush that maybe is ruined, inexpensive, something you don't use anymore. This is like one of my size 6. This is from my first brush set sample. This was like a sample. So they send samples to me when I'm testing out my brush sets and stuff. So this is old, well used. I think I might have dipped it in something. I don't know, but like it's frayed. Wasn't well taken care of. But what we're going to do basically is cut it to create uneven edges. So what she said to do, which I'm going to try, she said to spread it out, and then she likes to leave this center long. I loved her well, this looks a little too uniform. Her talk about just imagine you're cutting your bangs, which I've done many times. And then she's like, spread it out again a different way. You just want it to be like uneven. But leave the center kind of long. So it's all like really jaggedy. Maybe even shorter ones. Okay, let's see. So it's like super not great, right? Okay. Ruin your brushes, guys. Obviously not expensive ones. Okay, let me just get rid of this hair for a second. All right, and we're going to create some foliage or our evergreen tree. So I'm going to wet it, my nicely new jagged brush, and I'm going to pick my color. And she said to leave the center a little bit longer so you can get that little point, which looks like we will achieve with this. Just mixing my color, and I'm gonna, why is my hand so shaky today? There's our stem. And then you're just gonna dab and get these irregular shapes with your newly creative foliage brush, which it does make better irregular shapes than when I use just my round brush. So usually what I will do, because I don't usually have this brush, or I haven't created this brush before, I will just kind of break up the bristles of my round brush like this. Like I will dab it on my paper towel, kind of break it up like that, and then go into my painting. But it's still a little bit more of a pattern. You see what I mean? When I do that, so this, having the bristles kind of all different sizes, I guess, is a little better, which is kind of cool. And then when I do my evergreen trees, I try to make them uneven, if that makes sense. Give them a little bit of gaps. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want it completely... Ooh, look at the little lines I'm getting there. Just practicing. Try and make it irregular so it's not the exact same on both sides, if that makes sense. Ooh, I can get some really nice, like, thin pine needles with this. Okay, I kind of like it better like this. But yeah, cutting away a lot of those bristles allowed for some really cool pine, like look at this pine needle shape. Ooh, I like this better than like the dabbing thing I was doing up here. Okay, that's cool. See, you're learning, I'm learning. Thank you, Sarah, for this brush idea. That's really cool. I'm sure lots of other people have done it before. I just hadn't. But yeah, there's another one. And then what I like to do, again, is kind of just blend out the bottom. But like you can get like cool grass shapes, not like there would be grass in the snow, but you know what I mean. Cool. I like that one. That's really cool, but that's also really cool. Okay. So that's number 2. Now I could paint trees all day like this. Okay, now number 3. This one I just tried. I hadn't seen anywhere, but it's just like something that I just wanted to give a go. I've used salt before, but I hadn't used it for an evergreen tree. So for this, I'm gonna grab a wash brush. I wanna do a background for this. Okay, so I'm just gonna do some blue because we're gonna do wet on wet. So there's 2 parts to this one. And I hope it works. Otherwise, I'm a fraud. No, I'm kidding. We'll try something else if it doesn't work. But I think it's going to work. I'm willing it to work. So when you're doing wet on wet, your paint to water ratio is important, and the amount of water you put down is important. When you're doing wet on wet, you're applying your wet background. You don't want it to be soaking wet where there's going to be puddles, because then your color doesn't disperse nicely. It will puddle in one area and won't expand the way you want it to. Now let's take a look at the difference of doing complete wet on wet with the difference with the spray bottle and like the sparkle, because it's going to be similar but not the same. Okay, hold on. Let me just grab a little bit more. I've had people asking what color this is. It's a Shinhan blue. It's called pale blue, just in case anyone wants to know. Okay, so background is nice and wet and it's even. That's the point. Has to be evenly wet everywhere. So just making sure it's nice and even. Then we're going to paint our tree with just our regular brush. Not too much water or paint, because you don't want it to explode everywhere. You want it to be like a controlled explosion. So it still gives that kind of pine needle effect, but not the same as that we got here. Okay, and I'm just going to do a general shape. Okay, just going back and forth. And I usually tend to do these kind of trees for backgrounds when things are a bit more out of focus, a tree's out of focus. Okay. Like that. I'm going to grab a little bit of dark green too, just tap it, especially towards the center. Okay, not using a lot of water. You want it to be wet, but you want to maintain the same level of wetness over the whole tree. Now this, just doing wet on wet without the salt, gives you a nice fluffy out of focus tree, which is really nice for backgrounds. Okay, but we're gonna add salt and see how it goes. Okay, the only trick with this is we're gonna have to figure out a way to add the salt just to the tree, not necessarily the background. So I have salt in this little Frankenstein container. Thank you to my children. And I'm just going to gently sprinkle it just where the green is, not too much. I'm still learning how much salt to put on things, because I want it to act like a little bit of a sparkle on the tree, not a ton though. And what salt does is it repels, I don't know if that's too much, repels the color and will give you this kind of like almost like a snow effect. Okay, but you have to let it completely dry for it to work. So we're going to let that dry. But even so, just another technique is doing the wet on wet, which is really, really cool looking. Okay. And then while we're waiting for that to dry, we're going to do our last one. Same kind of thing. I don't think I'm going to add the salt. I don't know. Maybe. We'll see. But I'm going to do a background first. We're going to do the wet on wet technique. Oops. I could paint trees forever. They're just so fun and relaxing, I find. And it's definitely something that if you're struggling with, you get better with practice, okay? Everyone's trees look a little wonky at the beginning. Just keep that in mind. Okay, same level of wetness everywhere. Nice and even. Like so. I'll wash off my brush. Okay. Then I'm going to grab my brush, grab my green, and again, I'm going to paint my wet on wet tree. Okay, a line going down the middle, and then just tapping either side. Now, have your toothpick handy this time, okay? Because we're going to use our toothpick to carve some pine needles within our tree. Okay, and I'm just tapping, tap, tap, tap. A little bit more of our darker green. Like so. You want it on the darker side. You don't want it too light, because once we carve in those the pine needles with the toothpick, what happens is you'll see the toothpick, the line where you carve the toothpick, actually the watercolor runs into it and it darkens. I'm going to start up here. See that? It creates a dark line, and you're just going to almost draw your little pine needles. Now, I don't want to do the whole thing because I don't want it to take forever. I'm just going to choose little areas where I'm going to create these pine needles so it looks like there's little bits of darkness. And what I'm doing, if we can zoom in, so I'm just creating this curved line and then these little curved pine needle shapes. Now remember, you don't want it just going out side to side. You want it coming down the middle too. So have some that are like curving down the middle. And then the only thing with this is you've got to work kind of fast, because the color will only kind of sit in those little grooves for as long as the paint is wet. Once it's wet, or once it's dry, it stops kind of soaking in there. That's just another little thing. See how this is starting to sparkle already? Oh, so pretty. Part of me wants to add some salt to this. See, it's starting to dry. Should have gone a little faster, but it's still kind of cool. Now see, yeah, when it's dry, it's like acts white when you carve in instead of soaking in the dark part. Now we're going to try something. this is a test because it's starting to dry. We are going to try and do wet on damp. So we have wet on wet, which we did here, which it kind of, you know, exploded a bit. Wet on damp is similar but different because it's going to create a slightly different effect. It's going to repel a little bit of the color. So you got to be very careful with where you're placing the color and how much water you're using. So I'm just going to put water in my brush, just a little bit of color. And I'm just going to go back in there. So my paper is not completely dry, but it's also not completely wet. So you'll start to see it has not this sharp clean edge where you painted. It starts to kind of fluff out a little bit. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but this is going to allow you a little bit more time to carve in those toothpick branches. I'm going to add just a little bit more water to the center here. It's the edges you kind of have to worry about. I love the sparkle on this so far though. That's cool. Yeah, it's like super hot in my office and drying so fast. So I'm just adding, whew. Wonder if we add salt on here too. Should we do it? Should we do it? Get that extra sparkle. I think so. It's drying pretty fast. So why not, right? I'm going to add a little bit of salt. This is all about experimentation, my friends. Trying things you've never tried before. I love it. Okay. Like that. And then while it's still wet, I'm going to continue with my toothpick. And hope it works. And wish for the best. Okay, but that's just another technique you can use. For this kind of stuff, the only way you're going to get better is just practice and experimenting. Try different things. Even with this is still a little bit out of focus. If you want to, you can, you know, hold on, I'll grab my brush in a second. Actually, one thing I'm learning right now is I'm taking the watercolor and I'm dragging it towards the edges and creating little pine needles. Like it's dragging the color outwards, which is kind of cool. Okay. So you can take your brush. This part's not dry yet, but down here it's dry. If you wanted to add a little bit more to this, maybe you could even do like little, you know what, let's take our foliage brush. Just kind of do a little bit of pine needles kind of coming out from underneath that salt. I think that looks kind of cool too. So yeah, try different things. I'm going to quickly skip to when all this is dry so you guys can see how it turned out. Let me know in the comments which is your favorite technique. You know what? I do want to try this one more time. Okay. I'm going to do a little tree beside it. I got to try this again. Okay, far away. There we go. Let's see. I'm going to keep practicing. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Look at that. See, it's a little different than just the wet on wet. It doesn't spread out as far. But man, it looks cool. I still think I'm getting it too wet. But I don't know. So cool. So cool. Love the way it looks. Okay, there, I'm done. Let's look at it, how it ends up, and then you guys can let me know your favorites. Okay, so now they're dry. The salt one was really cool. It didn't work as well up here. I think I might have had too much paint, or just, I don't know. But I really love the effect on here, and then just the added little bristles after. This one, I think going over it, I mean, it still looks pretty cool. But I do like the toothpick grooves. I think that looks really awesome. And then these ones, again, just so much fun. I think this would work better for background trees, but doing the foliage brush was really cool for, you know, foreground trees. I don't know. Lots of fun. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Which one is your favorite? And let me know how it worked out for you. Thank you all so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it and I hope you learned something. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and follow me on all my other platforms for tons more content. Have a wonderful day, guys. Bye.